Torah on, I guess if you're watching the screen on my right, your left, my right, something like that. Doesn't matter at that point. Uh, Due to scheduling conflicts, we have agreed to rearrange and kind of sporadically meet on Friday mornings around 5 a.m. Give you guys a good start to your day of prep. If you work on Fridays, awesome. If you don't work on Fridays, then use it as an opportunity to get stuff done, all that fun stuff. Who you want to open us up in prayer real quick?
Sure thing, man. Father, thank you for another beautiful day. Father, thank you for allowing us to overcome scheduling issues. Thank you for providing us this opportunity, this time to come to you this morning and just have good fellowship. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for your son. Please lead us this morning in what you need us to know and understand. Father, help us to prepare for the day ahead and just put into our hands what we need to be obedient to you. Father, we love you. We thank you. We praise you. In the mighty name of your son, Yeshua. Amen.
Oh, man. I don't really know where we're going to go with this, but I do want to start. It's the 21st, so let's hit Proverbs 21 and go from there. Let's see. I'm on page 748. The sovereign's heart is his channels of water. In the hand of Yahweh, he turns it wherever he wishes. All a man's ways are right in his own eyes, but Yahweh weighs the hearts. To do righteousness and right ruling is more acceptable to Yahweh than a slaughtering. A haughty look, a proud heart, the lamp of wrong are sin. The plans of the hard worker lead only to plenty, but all rash haste only to poverty. Gaining treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor. Heading for death, the spoil of the wrong catches them, because they refuse to do right ruling. The way of a guilty man is perverse, but as for the innocent, his work is right. It is better to dwell in a corner of a roof than in a house shared with a contentious woman. The desire of the wrong is set upon evil. His neighbor finds no favor in his eyes. When the scoffer is punished, the simple is made wise. But when the wise is instructed, he receives knowledge. The righteous one understands the house of the wrong. He who overthrows the wrong for their evil. Whoever shuts his ears to the city of the poor, let him also cry and not be heard. A gift in concealment subdues displeasure, and a bribe in the bosom of strong wrath. To do right ruling is joy to the righteous, but ruin to the workers of wickedness. A man who strays from the way of understanding rests in the assembly of the dead. He who loves pleasure is a poor man. He who loves wine and oil does not become rich. The wrong is a ransom for the righteous, and the treacherous for the straight. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and vexed woman. Desirable treasure and oil are in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it up. He who pursues righteousness and loving commitment finds life, righteousness, and esteem. A wise one scales the city of the mighty and brings down the trusted stronghold. Whoever guards his mouth and tongue guards his life for distress, or guards his life from distresses. Proud, haughty scoffers is his name. He acts with arrogant pride. The desire of the lazy man slays him, for his hand refuses to work. He covers greedily all day long, but the righteous gives and does not withhold. The slaughtering of the wrong is an abomination. How much more were when he brings it with wickedness? A false witness perishes, but the man who obeys speaks forever. A wrong man hardens his face, but as for the straight, he establishes his way. There is no wisdom or understanding of counsel against Yahweh. The horse is prepared for the day of battle, and the deliverance is of Yahweh. Shalom, you guys who are in the chat. I don't see any familiar faces, but in case you guys are wondering, we are just wrapping up Proverbs 21. That's on page 748 in the Scriptures 2009 is the translation that both me and Hoot are reading. Although just about any translation that Solid is going to do, and there's a lot of solid ones out there.
Stand by.
Yeah, you're good, man. Just going through all of this. I like the idea of hitting a proverb every day. You know, you got 31 proverbs in the book of Proverbs, and you know your maximum days in a month is 31 days. So you know, you just pick a proverb that lines up with the calendar day of the month and go from there. And specifically, you're going to get a lot of repetition, and I think it hits on a few areas. You're going to get number one, reps and sets. Number two, a lot of times these lessons have got to be driven hard to the point where, you know, it's kind of the hello McFly, are you there? Sometimes just hearing something once doesn't always make it sit.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Who you got anything that just, I mean, grabbed hold of you while we were reading that?
I'm not sure why, but verse 18 kind of stood out to me.
Okay.
So the wrong is a ransom for the righteous, and the treacherous for the straight.
Okay.
Especially kind of getting farther into Revelation, seeing how everything pans out. Of course, there's so many cross references within this book.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And so there seems to be, I mean, there's plenty of overarching themes within the context of the entirety of the book, but one that, you know, stands out in that particular verse is this idea that there's really two sides that you could really choose to walk in, and one doesn't end so well.
Yeah.
And the wrong is a ransom for the righteous is, it's kind of a bold statement, I guess, because, you know, obviously understanding what a ransom is, they're essentially taking the fall for the sake of the righteous, so that they may dwell forever. Now, I don't think that's not me trying to say that. Obviously, come the end, that they have to dude, in order for the righteous to be righteous, like you're only gonna make it there from based on your own works. But
Well, I find it interesting. Um, there are passages that talk about uh, the righteous and the unrighteous, uh, and how ultimately the unrighteous are going to have to submit to the righteous. And I think, having done a survey of them a few days back, and I don't remember the specific ones, so I'm grasping here, but um, it ultimately boils down to Yahweh's in control, and there's a lot of people who are running from Him, and at the end of it all, every knee is going to bow. Um, every tongue's going to confess. We know that, uh, and so it's either those who willingly choose to follow Him, or those that have openly rejected Him for so long that He ultimately gives them over to their own hearts. But they're still going to be in submission to what His will is. Uh, it's just not going to pan out very well for that in that circumstance. Um, so you're pointing out of 18, the wrong is a ransom for the righteous, and the treacherous for the straight. You're walking in line. It's going to pan out better. Uh, I had a I had a situation at work the other day, and without getting into the specifics, uh, there was a genuine mistake made by somebody who was not at our workplace, but we had to deal with the ramifications of. Uh, and at a certain level, it's like, hey, that's not fair. Uh, we have to fix somebody else's mistake. Uh, but the individual who caught the mistake, everybody was like, "Oh man, you're being really nitpicky about this. Uh, like, is this a safety issue, or is this just a paperwork error that we can correct because we're in a time sensitive situation? Like, you know, are we really gonna cost the company more money trying to fix this second, or why don't we wait a little while?" Was the general attitude that everybody had against this person who found the mistake, myself included. It's like, hey, is this a safety issue or not? That being said, the dude was right, and it's like, hey, due to the nature of the industry that we're in, like we have to have our paperwork right, because if our paperwork's not right, uh, then there are significant issues that go down the line. The other question is what else is wrong? Uh, and dude was right for pointing out the mistake. Um, Dude was right for, hey, I'm not comfortable putting my credentials on the line of the safety of everybody who is in my care unless this mistake is corrected first. Uh, and ultimately, this dude's assertion won out. It's like, hey, yeah, he's right. We have to make this right before we can proceed. Uh, and it cost us some time up front, but in the long run, that mistake was taken care of, and then it wasn't somebody else's problem on top of like all the things that added. Like, there was a class I used to teach that I always told everybody that um, poo poo stacks, it doesn't run downhill. Uh, and the core of that is like mistakes build on top of each other. They don't always just run away. And you have mistake on mistake on mistake on mistake on mistake. And what starts off as things that are relatively small and don't matter eventually build up to the point that they do. Uh, and if you have people who are wrong and treacherous, there are certain things that we're like, oh, that's not that bad. but it becomes a habit and it tears you apart. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, looking at pornography one time isn't going to, you know, cause tremendous ramifications in the short term. But if you build a habit of it, like it can ruin everything. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, and kind of transitioning into that, right? I think it's the more you stay focused and the more you start to pay attention and being intentional with your life,
Mhm.
you start to realize the importance of the environments you're in, the things you're around, the things that you're intaking daily, whether that's through your phone or, you know, people's attitudes, what they're saying. So something I've been super mindful of recently is the guy who was once this guy who's not
Mhm.
dead, right? He was a pornography addict.
Oh yeah, 100%. Same in
And,
this boat too, man.
you know, with that, I have to constantly remind myself that I'm a new creation unto Yah, right? Because praise Yeshua. But the enemy usually tries to create some sort of identity crisis within us where
Oh
you
yeah,
forget that, right? He wants you to forget that and make you believe that you're still that thing, right?
yeah.
Um, because you can overcome those situations, but the temptation's always going to be there. You know,
Yeah.
at least for me. And I
I,
don't know
I
if this.
will I will give you this ray of hope because I know we've talked about this
Yeah,
ad nauseum before. Uh, I don't think it ever goes away, but it gets better.
right.
It really does get better. Um, I mean, I think the last time that I intentionally sought out pornography was at least 8, 9 years ago. I mean, it's been a long time. Doesn't mean that I don't see stuff when scroll through an Instagram feed or whatever. I make a diligent effort that anytime I see something like that, or am followed by one of those spam accounts that's trying to reel you in or whatever, to block it and communicate to Instagram, hey, I don't want to see this. This is not the content that I want you to show me. Uh, and it's probably 60 seconds of extra work every time I come across it, but
Yep.
the payout in the long run is better. And I mean that's spools back around to what I was just sharing a few minutes ago. Um, Sometimes the little bit of extra upfront saves you a tremendous amount later.
Yep.
Uh, and the tactical practical uh, for people who are struggling in it. Uh, Submit to Yahweh, resist the devil, and he'll flee from you. Uh, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be things in your flesh that you don't wrestle with, but the more you resist evil, the less appealing it ever becomes. So there is hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say one thing that might help somebody out there is the more you try to convince yourself that you don't struggle, you're only lying to yourself. And it only makes it worse.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to understand and submit that you're struggling because that's literally a part of this life. You know, we're guaranteed to struggle. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's going through it. And the more that you can submit that to your creator and seek him and, try to find help, it starts to take that weight, that burden off your shoulders because then you're not doing it alone. Because the thing is, you'll never walk in this life and handle your day to day, your problems with your strength alone. Like,
Mhm.
it has to be his. Um, and to kind of wrap up that idea, that thought, for me right now, having that been one of my biggest struggles in life thus far, um, yeah, it's a conscientious effort every single
Mhm.
day to stay away from that. And I've broken it down to just the things that I'm hearing people say, you
Mhm.
know. I was talking to some people at work, working at a automotive shop or a shop in general. You're gonna hear some things. And
I've participated in a lot of those
yeah,
conversations.
yeah, there was a guy once that I used to be that,
Mhm.
yeah, but and I was just having, and it wasn't to condemn them, it wasn't to judge them.
Yeah.
It was just simply making the statement, trying to make it more of like a witnessing opportunity, maybe
Mhm.
to show them how devoted this walk is for me,
Yeah.
to inspire them, maybe whatever it was. And I was just explaining to them, like that verse in Proverbs has always hit me. The power of life and death are in the tongue.
Mhm.
Like, and ever since I've read that, I've just started to continue to better understand that
Mhm.
everything we say has a meaning, and it could either put life or it could put death into somebody. Up to
You
that
know,
point, right?
we're gonna have to give account for every careless word we've ever spoken, and man, I
Mhm.
can tell you that even recently, my ledger in that is a lot of careless words, a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
So,
And so, this idea I was bringing forth to him was like, "Hey, man, like, don't think that I'm trying to tell you to police your speech or anything like that. I'm just trying to throw a witness out there for you, but like,
mhm,
I'm making a conscientious effort with just the words I'm hearing people say, and it's like I'm trying to avoid crude conversations. I'm trying to avoid like
mhm,
hearing things sexually. Like, I need to be better for myself, right? Like, I'm not
mhm,
telling you anything, but for myself, I need to be better at, like, when I start hearing those things, to just turn and walk away.
yeah,
That idea of like repentance, right? Turn
mhm,
to shuva, make a 180 and get out of that situation. Because what I started to build on top of is the more you're allowing certain things in your environment to persuade your thoughts and your thought processes, the more it's planting those seeds in the back of your mind. And a lot of times we don't understand what it's doing in the background subconsciously,
mhm,
where eventually down the line, the more that idea starts to build in you, that's when your flesh, when you
mhm,
least expect it, is going to start looking into things given temptation. Because, like I said, the temptation's always going to be there,
yeah,
and you're either making a conscious effort in line with your creator to stay away from the things that separate you from him, or you're not.
mhm,
And it's just being intentional with your walk is very important. And it's whatever your struggle is. This is just mine, so I can harp on it.
mhm,
Whatever it is, you just got to be intentional with it. And it's also one of those things where the enemy's going to lie to you a
mhm,
lot, and he's going to try and make you feel alone. You're not alone, and especially that one, right?
mhm,
Pornography or just like sexual immorality, whatever it is. Guess what? Just about every other person on the planet struggles with that.
yeah,
So you're not that special, and it's okay to admit it. I mean, if you have to seek help,
mhm,
if there's someone that you need to go talk to, whatever it is,
mhm,
it's okay. Like, don't shelter that.
mhm,
So yeah, man, it's been an interesting thing where I'm being a lot more intentional with
mhm,
even the littlest of things, and I'm already starting to see a noticeable difference.
yeah,
So
that's awesome,
yeah.
man. I'll run back to verse 21. He who pursues righteousness and loving
Mhm.
commitment finds life, righteousness, and esteem.
Oh man.
And then, as far as the battle of things. The next verse, 22. A wise one scales the city of the mighty and brings down the trusted stronghold. Whoever guards his mouth and tongue guards his life from distress.
There you
I
go.
tell you, that's something I need to do a better job on.
Yep.
Like on what you were talking about, speaking life. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. There are the words that are coming out of my mouth, building life. I mean, our actions 100% too, because
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
actions are what people are
Well,
gonna
once you
hold
start to
on to
guard
tonight.
your speech, your actions tend to follow, in my experience.
Well,
And
is it James? And we're talking about guarding speech, so I think it's James chapter 3. Hebrews, James. All right. Page 1180. 1180. You want to take this one or you want me to?
yeah, I got you. I'm just trying to get there real quick. All right, you said chapter 3?
Yeah, whole thing.
All right. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, knowing that we shall receive greater judgment. But we shall stumble in many matters. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle the entire body. Look, we put bits in the mouths of horses for them to obey us, and we turn their body. Look at the ships too, also, although they are so big, are driven by strong winds. They are turned by a very small rudder, wherever the pilot intends. So too, tongue is a little member, yet boasts greatly. See how a little fire kindles a great forest, and the tongue is a fire, the world of unrighteousness. Among our members, the tongue is set, the one defiling the entire body, and setting on fire the wheel of life. It is set on fire by Gehenna. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea, is tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no man is able to tame the tongue. It is unruly, evil, filled with deadly poison. With it we bless our Elohim and Father, and with it we curse men, who have been made in the likeness of Elohim. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brothers, this should not be so. Does the fountain send forth the sweet and the bitter from the same opening? My brothers, is a fig tree able to bear olives, or a grapevine figs? So neither a fountain able to make salt and sweet water. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by his good behavior his works and meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast against and lie against the truth. This is not the wisdom coming down from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and self-seeking are, there is confusion and every foul deed. But the wisdom from above is first clean, then peaceable, gentle, ready to obey, filled with compassion and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Some decent rebukes in there, and
Yeah.
some good wisdom.
Not stepping on toes too hard, just using the steel toe boots that have the spikes on them. No big deal.
So, like,
Conviction!
going back to verse 9, man. This is good. So, first, with it we bless our Elohim and Father, and with it we curse men. So just that dichotomy there. Like, how
And
dare we?
those men have been made in the image
Yes,
and
yes.
likeness of Elohim.
It's like, hey man, did you forget? Like, we were all fearfully and wonderfully created in the image of our Creator.
Dude,
You like,
this was just the other day. Like I was having such a self-righteous moment.
mm,
This dude that works in proximity to me. He doesn't work with me for the same company, but we
right,
run into each other all the time. And I I was just thinking like, man, what a dumb person. Like, oh my goodness, like this dude's intelligence is lower than the temperature IQ wise. So it's just like this is not good. Like please. And I caught myself like halfway through it, and I know it was the Ruach whispering in my ear. I know it. It's like, dude, I love this person, and you're thinking horrible things about them. Knock it
been there.
off. And I'm just like, oh, but it's easier and more fun to think awful things about people. Like, no, this person's made in the image of Yahweh, and He loves them relentlessly. So it's like, okay, yes, sir. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Like,
I think we all.
and I think that life and death being in the power of the tongue, I think a lot of it starts in our thoughts
Hmm.
because our thoughts become our words and our words become our actions. And I mean, Scripture tells us to take every thought captive.
Yeah, yeah. That's a
And
it's a good one. It's a good one
so,
that I remind myself of all the time.
like,
When I
and
start to have those
I'm saying
thoughts.
this is a recent example. Like this happens regularly for me. Uh, so don't don't let anyone think that you know high and mighty is like, yeah, I may think that way sometimes, but that's not like, talk about chief of sinners over here. Like
Well,
I'm
it's
full of
something
it.
too. So as I've been trying to be a better witness and example to those around me, especially at work,
Mhm,
um, I try to constantly remind them like this is not a holier than thou over
mhm,
here. Like, I don't know if because I'm so set apart
mhm,
from my environment that they have this idea that I'm just like perfect, but I'm like, dude, I suck just like
mhm.
everybody else.
Yeah.
And sometimes they catch glimpses of that, and I'm like, hey, remember, human over here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just making it intentional to be better.
Mhm,
And I don't know how many people at work have done this, but I think like my relationship with my boss has grown over time
mhm,
because when I catch myself in a bad way, I make a conscientious effort to go make peace with that
mhm,
person, right? Goes back to something Messiah said, if you're trying to offer up a peace offering or, whatever it particularly was, I don't remember,
mhm,
up at the slaughter, like, but you remember that you have something against your brother, you
mhm.
leave that there, drop that BS,
I think that's
go
in
make peace with
Matthew
your brother,
5.
and then come back. Yeah, yeah, Sermon on the Mount for sure.
Yeah, you were reading that the other day.
I was.
I was listening to the
The-
recast.
Yeah,
So hang on.
yeah, man, that one's good.
I'm
It,
pretty
it
sure it's Matthew 5. It may be Matthew
I've
6.
definitely incorporated that one into my walk for sure. Let's
Dude,
see.
I've had times where I have legitimately left group worship
Oof,
um, to go make
oof,
right with somebody, like, because just overwhelming conviction. Um,
for sure.
so um, one of them, probably one of the bigger ones, uh, my I had sold a couple of things, um, and the price that I sold the stuff for, I actually did pretty well on. And I wanted to uh, have a little bit of like surprise money for my wife because we have joint accounts. And so it makes surprising each other for gifts and things difficult because it's like, oh, hey, you see the transaction. Um, and so the items that I sold, um, I did better than I originally intended to get. And so it's like, okay, let's, set some of this aside. Hey, this is the amount that she expected me to sell this for. So that's what went into the account. Um, and I used some of that money. Now, mind you, this is like my items that I sold, so it's my stuff. I used some of that money to buy some stuff for myself. Also had other stuff set aside for gifts, things like that. Um, I come home from purchasing some of that stuff, uh, and uh, she has some really bad news that she had been let go from her job, and we moved from two income to one income, and the one income we had was going to just barely pay the bills, but not much else. Um, and it's like, oh yeah, this thing that you see me with right now, and thankfully what I bought was used and not new. I say thankfully, I was like, what fed into the lie. I was like, yes, this was a gift from a friend. He told me to hang on to this as long as I want to and give it back to him later. Because I didn't have the heart to tell her that I just spent money that I didn't know we didn't have. And the hard conversation would have been, hey, I was dumb. I spent this when I shouldn't have. I should have been upfront with you. Um, by the way, here's the extra money that I got. Um, on top of this, like I'll go return this or I'll sell it or whatever and get, you know, what we can for it. And hey, look at this blessing. We've been given money, beyond what I originally thought we were going to get. So this is a surplus. Like that's what the conversation should have been.
Right.
But I was afraid of the hard conversation. And this is years ago. I was afraid of the hard conversation and I lied, and that was not okay, lying to my helpmate at all. Like lying in general is not okay, but like specifically like a lie to your helpmate is, I think, worse because you're betraying a deeper level of trust. Um, and Everything panned out cool job wise. We made some big steps and transitions at the same time, um, and she got additional employment until we had kids, and we made the decision to intentionally become a one income family. um, but a couple of years had gone by, and I had just blown everything off, and we're worshiping together with a group of people who we love, and I just had this overwhelming like, hey, I do not accept your worship.
Mm.
You have something that is not right between you and your spouse, and you need to go make it right now. um, and like I overwhelming sense of conviction was just on me. I was like, okay, yes, sir, let's go make this right. And I was like, hey, come with me. Like we need to go talk like now, because I can't sit in here until we make this right. Um, and I'm just like, hey, babe, you remember about 2, 3 years ago when we had this conversation? You had lost your job, all that. I lied to you, and I'm really sorry. And I just laid it all out for her. I was like, I sold this for this much, not this much, and I used some of the money to buy this stuff. And um, I told you it was a gift. It wasn't. Um, it was a purchase, and I should have been upfront and honest with you about this from the get go. And that led to a very long conversation where we just hashed things out, and we made things right. Um, I made things right, and set up some safeguards to where it would be easier for us to have some of the harder conversations that needed to happen. And that was good and healing. Um, it shouldn't have ever gone that way originally. I should have just been upfront and honest from the get go. Uh, but after that, coming back into group worship, um, it was just like, oh, the weight is gone, the freedom is there. Like, um, there's not there's not this lie that's between us anymore. Like, it's good. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it wasn't quite the same, but I think it's in the same context. But around the time of the divorce,
Mhm.
it was still I was still feeling the repercussions, the trickling downs of it.
Mhm.
Um, it was probably within the same month or so, and I remember I spent the first week rebuking a lot of things, trying to stay away from the enemy's seeds that he's been planting in my thoughts. Like it was a rough time.
Mhm.
And shortly overcoming that. Uh, so like the several months preceding, I spent a lot of time trying to seek the Father
Mhm.
because I started to realize my humanness, and obviously I was starting to come around to, hey, this is all right. He's using this situation to bless me with
Mhm.
time to seek him. Like now I have no obligation other than, hey, I spend more time in the word. I'm gonna focus on building myself up for you,
Mhm.
like this removal of all these things. Well, in that time, you know, I it wasn't quite like a Sabbath or worship or anything like that, but as I was continuing to try and like seek him more and more, something
Mhm.
just at some point started to get put on my heart where it's like, hey, it's really great that you're seeking me right now and that you're trying to worship me and praise me and, you know, dig into my word, but you've built a lot of almost hatred and almost resentment towards this person.
Mhm.
And I get that you feel betrayed and all these things, but like, I think you need to come forth on that and be honest and like have that conversation despite who that person is and get that out of the way because the more you hold on to that, your worship to me is going to become less and less,
Mhm.
important. And so I ended up having that hard conversation where, and it took me a few minutes, even when I intentionally sat down to make the phone call, to actually make the phone call. And I finally called my ex-wife and I was like, hey, I need to I need to have this conversation with you. And she's like,
Mhm.
okay. And I'm like, look, I'm just gonna be honest here. Here's all these things. I'm sorry. I should not be this way.
Mhm.
And you're probably asking, why am I even telling you this? Well, I have to. Like, I want to be honest. And, like, just because what happened doesn't mean we have to be terrible people to one another. And I'm doing this to reconcile with all of this right now in hopes that we can forgive one another, you know? And it was my way of trying to forgive her and not with the expectation, but the hope that she might forgive me.
Mhm.
Um, and to my surprise, it went fairly well. I think there was some reconciling, um, and I'm not saying this to be rash or anything. It's
Mhm.
just being truthful. She's a little. She could be. She had the intention sometimes of being a little
Mhm.
narcissistic. So that was tough because in that conversation, it started kind of going back to some things that we had when we were married, where she was intentionally seeking um, ways to argue,
Mhm.
and I had to shut it down. And I was like, look, this is not this phone call. I'm not trying to rehash any old stuff. Like, I'm trying to reconcile. So look, you hold on to those feelings if you must, but I'm not having that conversation. I'm seeking to forgive you, and that's only going to make it worse. So, like, all of that's done as far as I'm concerned. So, and at one point when that started happening, I almost told myself, like, this is exactly why you didn't want to do this. And I almost stopped, and I'm like, no, but this is exactly why I do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, it can be really rough. It's definitely something that you, as a human being in the flesh, don't want to do most of the time, but like, you have to. It's important. It takes a lot of that weight off. Um, and until I did that, I couldn't like fully give him my praise. I couldn't fully seek him on things, and so it did what it needed to do for me to not only get right with her, but get right with the Father too. So yeah, that's a big one.
So I did find it. It's Matthew 5:23. It's on page 923. If then you bring her. Sorry, I'm going to back up to 22. But I say to you that whoever is wroth with his brother without cause shall be liable to judgment, and whoever says to his brother Raca shall be liable to the Sanhedrin, but whoever says you fool shall be liable to the fires of Gehenna. If then you bring your gift to the slaughter place, and there remember that your brother holds whatever against you, leave your gift there before the slaughter place, and go first make peace with your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Be well-minded with your opponent promptly while you are on the way with him, lest your opponent deliver you to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Truly I say to you that you shall by no means get out of there till you have paid the last quadrants. So go make it right.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting too, like, be well minded with your opponent promptly while you're on the way with them, unless your opponent deliver you to the judge. Like, there's one righteous judge. And something that kind of comes to mind there is like, we have an accuser. It's Satan. And you kind of get into the, okay, so let a thing be established with 2 or 3 witnesses. We already have one witness all the time witnessing against you. Like, hey, he's the accused, right? He's gonna come to the judge and be like, hey, this one, he did this. This one, he did this. And the more witnesses you have on that account, like, the more your judgment can be finalized. And it's something to be mindful of like, and I'm not saying you should do these things with that hard intent, like, oh, I need less witnesses. It's just, it kind of furthers the thought that, like, there are eyes watching you. It's when you have those thoughts where, oh, this will be okay. It's just going to get swept under the rug. Nobody's going to, like, not only is Yah always looking down upon you, he sees the good and the bad, but you also have an accuser that's seeking to have you destroyed.
Yeah. 100%.
And then you have another one that, let's say that person prays or whatever, and they're coming to the Father like, please help me. This person is coming against me. Like, it's not giving you a good track record,
It's not.
And when the Father can see you intentionally trying to repent of that, that's when he'll have favor on you.
Well,
So
and
that's a big
that's
deal.
where life and death being in the power of the tongue.
Yeah.
Like, if we're not speaking life, and like, this is the part that I think is hard to wrestle with. Speaking life isn't saying nice things.
It's intentionally speaking the
Like,
word Yah when you can.
100%. Like, saying nice things can build up life in people,
Right.
But if we're only saying nice things, hey, I don't want to offend this person. It's like, well, the truth hurts sometimes.
Right.
We know that the word is sharper than any two-edged sword, cutting through flesh, bone, marrow, down into the spirit. So, like, there is going to be that aspect of saying what is right and offending people, and that's okay. Now, it doesn't give us license to, be a butthole about it. We need to
Well, no, no. I think
we,
there's a
we need
correct
we
way of
need to oh, of course, we need to speak life in such a way that, um, I mean, rules of communication, like, it's gotta be received. Um, so I mean that implies that we have to have enough context with the people around us that they're actually going to receive what we say, instead of just, "Oh, you need to repent." It's like, well, what what level of day to day, shoulder to shoulder do we have with this person to where we can call out the BS and say, "Hey, this isn't right," or where they can call out the BS in us, um, because that matters too.
yeah. Well, and
But
so like
also speaking life, building up the people around us. So like
yeah.
it has a lot of ogres have layers, onions have layers. So
Mhm. Well, rebuking goes well beyond like when I first heard of the word rebuke,
mhm,
um, I didn't. I was still new in understanding, so it's like easy to look at it in a negative context. But like rebuking goes long beyond being condescending to a person.
mhm,
It's more of like you're intentionally walking side by side with that person, trying to allow them to see where they made a mistake or something like
mhm,
that, and walking with them to try and help them reconcile themselves and help them to be better. You know,
mhm,
it initially starts out with, "Hey man, I just want to let you know you sucked in this department a little bit,"
mhm,
and a lot of times that's where that two-edged sword comes into play, where it's like they're probably not going to receive that well at first.
mhm,
But if you just leave it at that, they might become your enemy rather than your friend. The rebuke really comes in where it's like, hey, but good news. We have a Messiah who allows us to be better,
mhm,
who has paid the price for our wrongdoings, and like because of that, I love you, I care about you, and I'm gonna walk with you. Like let's look at this, break it down, and see how we can be better about this. Like it's you have to be a little harsh so that you can then help them, and to me that's what makes rebukes different from like condemning them, because
mhm,
that to me would be the life piece in it of like, hey, this action, you continue to do that, like you're going to kind of walk towards death.
mhm.
Let me help you walk towards a path of life. um and
I got a passage, that I want to jump to. I don't want to derail your thought.
no, you're good. I was kind of wrapping it up anyways.
Okay. Um, so let's jump to Leviticus 19,
mm, mhm.
page 125.
Because let's see.
But this conversation, I mean, has been centered more in Proverbs 21 than I think we originally realized it was going to be.
Right,
But
right.
Leviticus 19 comes to mind. Um, and there's a part of me that only wants to read a few verses out of here, but I think we should read the whole chapter,
Right.
because this hits on a lot of things.
It's the chapter of being set apart, it's important.
He always spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say to them, Be set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am set apart. Each one of you should fear his mother and his father, and guard my Sabbaths. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Do not turn to idols. Do not make for yourself molded mighty ones. I am Yahweh your Elohim. And when you slaughter a slaughtering of peace offerings to Yahweh, slaughter it for your acceptance. It is eaten the same day you slaughter it, and on the next day, and that which is left on the third day is burned with fire. So if it is eaten at all on the third day, it is abominable and not acceptable, or not accepted. And he who eats it bears his crookedness, because he has profaned the set apart offering of Yahweh, and that being shall be cut off from his people. And when you reap the harvest of your land, do not completely reap the corners of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. And do not glean your vineyard, or gather every grape of your vineyard. Leave them for the poor and for the sojourners. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. And do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yahweh. Do not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of him who is hired is not to remain with you all night until morning. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but fear your Elohim. I am Yahweh. Do no unrighteousness in right ruling. Do not be partial to the poor or favor the face of the great, but rightly rule your neighbor in righteousness. Do not go slandering among your people. Do not stand against the blood of your neighbor. I am Yahweh. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain and bear no sin because of him. I'm going to read that one again. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain and bear no sin because of him. And then verse 18, which is something that's going to be quoted by Messiah. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Love your neighbor as yourself. Verse 19, guard my laws and do not let your livestock mate with another kind. Do not sow your field with mixed seed, and do not put a garment woven of two sorts of thread upon you. And when a man has intercourse with a woman who is a female servant, engaged to a man and to be ransomed, but she has not been ransomed nor set free, there should be an inquiry. But they are not put to death because she was not free. And he shall bring his guilt offering to Yahweh to the door of the tent of appointment, a ram as a guilt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Yahweh, and for his sin which he has done, and the sin which he has sinned shall be forgiven him. And when you come into the land and have planted a kind of tree for food, then you shall reckon their fruit as uncircumcised. For 3 years it is uncircumcised to you, it is not eaten. And in the 4th year, all of its fruit is set apart. Praise to Yahweh. And in the 5th year, you eat its fruit, so that it increases its yield to you. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Do not eat meat with blood, and do not practice divination or magic. Do not round the corners of your head or destroy the corners of your beard. And do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. I am Yahweh. Do not profane your daughter by making her a whore, so that the land does not whore, and the land become filled with wickedness. Guard my Sabbaths and revere my set apart place, and reverence my set apart place. I am Yahweh. Do not turn to mediums and do not seek after spiritists, to be defiled by them. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Rise up before the gray-headed, and you shall favor the face of an old man, and shall fear your Elohim. I am Yahweh. And when a sojourner sojourns with you in your land, do not oppress him. Let the sojourner who sojourns among you be to you as the natives among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were sojourners in the land of Mizraim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Do no unrighteousness in right ruling, in measurement of length and weight, or in measuring liquids. Have right scales and right weights, a right epith and a right hin. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mizraim. And you shall guard my laws and all my right rulings, and do them. I am Yahweh. Specifically, verse 17, do not hate your brother in your heart, reprove your neighbor for certain, and bear no sin because of him. That's the verse that was coming to mind in what you were talking about.
There's a lot in there, man. Kind of towards the end there, there's a proverb for that too. Unequal weights and measures are an abomination. And the best way I've understood that one's kind of, I think about interest, kind of. I mean, that's an example I have. And I don't know. There's just, yeah, but that's pretty much the way to sum it up. Well, and then also, let's see, what am I trying to think of here? Verse 34, let the sojourner who sojourns among you be to you as a native among you. And you shall love him as yourself, which hits back. Uh-oh. What happened? Shalom, Badger. Good morning. Well,